Hello, thank you guys for taking some time. I know time is one of our most precious commodities that we have these days for sure. So thank you very much for taking some time to listen with us and hopefully talk with us, right? So but before we even begin with introductions, I want to throw out a big request. If you guys have any questions, comments, ideas, concerns, anything along those lines, throw it into the Q&A part of Zoom, and we will raise those up and discuss those things as well, right? This is not just for us to spill information out into the ether. If we want to make sure that you all are getting value out of this as well. So please make this as interactive as you would like to. With that being said, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us in our second of a 3.5-ish part series on what we're calling the ABCs of Composable Commerce. So my name's Nick. I am over here at Contentstack. I work on our partnership team and am a technologist over here. So I guess real quickly, let's just go ahead and give some introductions about ourselves, and then we'll kick off what it is we're talking about and why we're here today. So let's go in alphabetical order to keep this easy, because I'm sure your order is different than mine. So George, if you want to kick us off, we'll go alphabetical by first name.
Great, thanks, Nick. I'm George Fitzgibbons from BigCommerce. I'm an enterprise sales engineer. Background in engineering, moved more into the architecture of the world of commerce, and have been working at BigCommerce now about 3 years, helping our customers really understand the commerce suite and what we can offer.
All right, I'm Maribel. Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm a technology partner manager at Cloudinary. I lead our partner-built integrations program. I've been at Cloudinary for over 4 years as a CSM and now in this BD role.
Hi, everyone. Name is Sajid Momin. Thank you, Contentstack, for setting this up. So I play a senior director role at Algolia for the integrations team. I started off helping the partners at Algolia build integrations, and now I'm running a professional services to help customers and get integrations built for them.
Excellent. Super glad to have you guys here. I love it when I am the least smart and least technical person in the room. Always gives me a huge opportunity to learn and explore new ideas. So thank you guys for joining us as well. Just a quick recap, right? So this is, as I mentioned, the second of a multi-part series. And what we kind of talked about in the first kind of episode, if you will, is why we all kind of got together to do a joint project. What sort of problems in the world are we trying to solve by doing this? So if you haven't seen that, I would highly encourage you to go and take a look at it. It does help kind of frame up some things. But in case you're not going to do that or you don't have the time, a real quick recap is that the four of us as technology vendors, right, kind of got together and we're thinking about how we can show how easy it is, right, to actually leverage MACH technologies, right? So microservices, API first, et cetera. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But how can we do that, right? How can we do that from an easy perspective, from a time constrained perspective, and all those things, instead of implementing and moving away from your more traditional sort of legacy, suite-based platforms, and moving more to a best of breed stack approach. So that was one of the main drivers for us wanting to do this, right? And one of the big things is we wanted to, make sure that it was as easy as we said it was, right? So that was a big driving force for us. So today, what we want to talk about a little bit more is the architecture of the solution that we're putting together, and what that is it's a commerce experience for folks, right? So we wanted to combine the powers of content for commerce, a commerce engine, top quality asset management and merchandising opportunities, as well as search and merchandising opportunities with Algolia. So we're sort of covering off all these different spectrums, because these are sort of the core platforms that any commerce project really is going to need to start with. So this is hopefully going to be a really good example of how to get from 0 to 60, right? And how we did it, the issues that we ran into. So we'll get a little more technical today than we were certainly on the last one. But I guess before we jump into that, right, one of the things that we kind of need to think about is, what is MACH, right? What does that mean? It's another acronym in a technology space. So how is it relevant to this project? Why are we sort of leveraging that approach? So I guess I will kick that question over to Maribel and see what our thoughts are there.
Yeah, so most companies they re-platform their tech stack about every 5 years, and because of scaling issues, both business-wise and maybe architecture-wise, and sometimes there's compatibility issues or it's out of date. So imagine a world where you don't need a re-platform because it scales, or say you hate a technology, you want to swap it out or plug in a new business process as your company grows. So MACH is a set of technology principles allowing for a composable architecture. Instead of buying a monolith turnkey product, you can buy best of breed components that meet each of your business needs and hook them together like Legos. And so MACH, the acronym, it stands for microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless. Microservices, think of them as components or applications organized around business capabilities independent of each other, and they talk to each other via APIs. So that's the API first. Think about everything you do the front end you can do with APIs. And then cloud native, it's a SaaS vendor, and because it's cloud native, they can scale and means you can run one software and it's always up to date. Headless gives you the ability to decouple the front end user experience. You can build separate experience if need be. So the MACH architecture basically allows you to build new digital channels, digital experiences, allows you to be agile and try new things and innovate faster. So, thinking of those Lego pieces, you can tear them down, you could build rebuild with whatever blocks you have, and choose the pieces you want to add, replace, or move.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable. I think my favorite kind of big advantage that the MACH approach brings to the table, right, is the ability to activate new channels and touch points, right? As people move from, sort of a web-centric approach, right? And we know, 95% of all our projects, for instance, right, always starts on the web, and while people are, web leaning, I think there's also a big value in thinking about that with this very composable approach, right? Being able to move those Lego bricks around, it becomes very easy to activate, whatever the new hotness is, right? Maybe it's, activating an AR or VR app or something, but by all of our sort of technologies being technology agnostic, right, is sort of our core driver. I think that's one of the real kind of big advantages that I think is just super interesting about it. And of course, the choice, right, offering either yourselves or your customers, if you're an implementation organization, right, being able to have the right tool for the right job, I think is just a huge thing as well. All right, so I think moving along, right? So the four of us got together, right? Not just us, the four of our organizations got together and decided we were going to build this project, right? So we had some front end development going on, we had some back end development going on, we had experts in each of our platforms sort of interfacing and working together. So I guess it would be good to get a good understanding of how did we do that, right? How did we get started? What did we, how did we sort of approach that? And I guess we'll go in descending alphabetical order now. So George, we're going to pass that question over to you.
Yeah, great, Nick. And to your point, this has been a very interesting project because we are essentially co-developing something. And so with that, really thinking about starting from zero and building out a solution, there's two things I think of. And one, just to highlight, I think my bonus team members, Maribel and you, Nick, have done really a great job from a project management standpoint. And I think that's something that can be overlooked when you start thinking really in the code and APIs, but there has been a lot of structure, and whether that's shared Google Sheets, a shared Jira board, that's really helped accelerate and keep this on track. So definitely a big call out on just getting everybody on the same page. We're doing weekly stand-ups on Friday that have been essential to check in and see where everything is. And so at a high level, project management has been essential in getting it started. But I do want to speak a bit about technology-wise of getting the wheels moving on the front end and how everything talks together. And so one huge advantage we have is, you called us out, we have experts in the room. I have a question about Algolia, I have a question about Contentstack, Cloudinary, etc. Do you guys know it's spot on? So we're able to move very fast on this. But getting started from zero to something, one thing BigCommerce has typically acted as in these types of architecture is a hub. And so we think of ourselves as a hub with spokes to best-in-class services. And so really when we're thinking about how we want to start from a developer standpoint, one exercise that I went through is, okay, how do I get data into Contentstack? How do I get data into Algolia? Cloudinary, how does everything talk? What is this ecosystem? And so one big advantage of all of our companies have outside of, experts in the room is what I think of as pre-canned integrations. And I think we're going to talk about this later, but, getting merchandising products into Contentstack is a turnkey exercise now. Getting data over to Algolia is very straightforward. And so in about a day, I'm able to, okay, I have a front end. Now let me see what the admin experience is, because that's another aspect of MACH is there's business users, there's marketers. People are going to need to see how data moves. And so getting that lined up really accelerates, okay, now I do straightforward front end development from here. Everybody's going to know where their domain is. And so that has definitely been one of the good exercise of getting started in a MACH architecture is, okay, account for the business marketing users, account for the data. Once everything's mapped out, go to town and, on the front end and start styling everything up.
Yeah, great points. I mean, to sort of go back to the first one there, right, of project management. Obviously, most of you guys who are listening to us, right, you're not going to have 4 different, technology vendors that are trying to implement their own software. But there is a correlation to how a lot of teams, specifically development teams, work, right? As much as we all try to not be siloed as developers, we don't think of it as siloing. We think of it as building expertise, right? So you become an expert maybe on a search provider or an asset management system, or one of us others. So what our sort of learnings also kind of taught us is it's okay with the sort of the MACH approach, right? Since where everything's going to be interconnected anyways, to carve off those whole chunks and just move those over onto the teams where it makes sense. And I think when we're looking at this composable architecture and sort of set of APIs where we're just connecting to each other's endpoints, I don't have to be an expert in BigCommerce to implement my part of the solution. I don't really know much about search, to be completely honest with all of you, but fortunately, there's easy ways to get the data that we need to. And to George's point, we planned. We had our data maps put together. We figured out what was going to be the system of truth for which platforms and how that information needed to move. So I think our 2 big takeaways, and we all kind of agreed on this, quite ad nauseum yesterday, was planning, and then making sure that you have the appropriate management going forward. And I know these seem like sort of obvious things, but I think when we start thinking about the way that we need to leverage teams of specialists with MACH technologies, it's worth double downing on right at the beginning of those projects to make sure that those delineations are clear, because you don't just have one sweet expert who's going to be sort of doing all these things. We need to sort of create responsibility and accountability in each of sort of the micro teams, right? Who's going to be responsible for getting it delivered, and then who's accountable for actually getting it delivered. So I think when we kind of had the 4 of us as project managers managing micro projects, that really allowed us to, pardon the expression, but move at Mach speed. So I don't know if anybody else had anything they wanted to sort of pile on to the idea of, sort of how we got started, or anything we wanted to share there. All right, cool. So I guess let's, in sort of a transition from that, right? I think what were some of the problems, right, that we needed to overcome? I mean, obviously, one of the big ones, right, is the like I mentioned, right, I'm a specialist, right? So I live in sort of my little isolated bubble. But I guess, in terms of some of those other problems, those other kind of issues that we had to overcome, I guess, Sajid, since we're alphabetical going the wrong way now, or I guess,
yeah. Thanks, Nick. I think once one of the things I wanted to add to the MACH definition is MACH allows you to pick the best of breeds. So Contentstack for content, Cloudinary for asset management, BigCommerce for your products, pretty much your e-commerce management of your products and categories, and then obviously Algolia for your search. So I think from that point of view, I think we were like, okay, we have the right technologies to kind of provide the best experience for our end users. And one of the things that, as George mentioned, we had you guys, Nick and Maribel, kind of spearheaded and kind of you managed the entire project, and we were just there to kind of help support. And one of the things that I wanted to add is, traditionally, when you're working in a re-platform, you tend to work in a monolithic platform where you need to have experts that know the platform itself so you can build within it. Here, you just need to know the APIs. And if what George mentioned, if the integrations exist, then you can leverage that. But if you can't, there's APIs, there's SDKs that help enable your developers to build out these amazing integrations and rich experiences for your end user. And add to that is documentation. We do say Algolia has the best documentation. So documentation adds to the acceleration of delivery of your project. So making sure that sample codes are available so you can just plug and play, just POC it and make sure that everything works as described in the documentation. So I think from overcoming any problems, I think it was more, how do we get everybody on the same page, communicating, making sure that the tasks were done according to time, so that way we can launch during the conference. So I think that was, the major hurdle for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. So one of the other sort of reasons why we're doing this is Contentstack is having a conference coming up at the end of May, and we'll plug that a little bit later as well. So that's sort of we gave ourselves a timeline, right? So there was we all have day jobs as well, right? So everybody who's working on this, it's sort of like a little side hustle. It's that side project that it's the easy can to kick, right? When you all have other responsibilities. So when you think about sort of doing this all at an incredible kind of velocity and speed as well, I think that was a huge driver for why we needed to be able to leverage all of that good documentation, being able to get answers quickly. I think that's all just a true testament to sort of how easy it was for us to sort of get ourselves aligned from a technology perspective as well. But I guess to that point, right, of getting things up and running quickly, I think we should think about that a little bit more, right? How aside from having good documentation and access to each other, right? How was it really possible for us to get really going this quickly? So I guess maybe Maribel, if you want to kind of double click into that a little bit and shed some more light.
Yeah. So what's interesting is Contentstack has a true integration with Cloudinary. There's not really one with Cloudinary Algolia and Cloudinary BigCommerce, but that's not an issue because, as we mentioned, we're API driven. You can build anything you want with our APIs. And so having that headless approach, we're able to build whatever we want and pull from each other's platform. And so what's making this journey even more lightning fast is Contentstack has a native integration with all of us. And so we're able to utilize that platform where we can just easily say, okay, let's just configure, each of our products and then, tweak the front end and be able to have this up and going in no time.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, right? And George had mentioned the idea of like a hub and spoke approach earlier, right? And I think if you talk to enough technology vendors, we all want to be the hub, right? We all want to be that center part that connects to everything else for a variety of reasons. But what we kind of opted to do to solve some of that problem, right, where there isn't necessarily that out of the box integration between some of our platforms, that didn't slow us down, that didn't stop us. All it meant is that when we were doing our planning and platforming, we thought, okay, well, what if we have multiple hubs, right? What if BigCommerce is a hub connecting to the platforms it needs to, Contentstack is doing the same, et cetera, right? What if we can do that and not have to worry about data redundancy, right? Synchronizing information from one platform to another when it doesn't need to happen. So we'll get into that. I think, yeah, actually, why don't we move on to kind of talking about the architecture if I'm going to sit here and kind of spin my wheels, talking about it. So I think if we can bring up look at that. I don't even have to ask for it. There's some magical webinar fairies in the background making things just happen. So when we started thinking about this, right, we wanted to look at this from an architecture perspective and figure out how we can get sort of that multi-hub approach. And we'll look at that in even more detail in a bit when we look at how the data itself is going to live and flow. And I certainly don't want to step on, sort of any toes here. So I guess when we were designing this, right, when we came up with, sort of this approach of leveraging BigCommerce, Algolia, Cloudinary, and Contentstack, right, we also then sort of decided on some of the standards that are out there, right? So things like GitHub, so we could have a public repository that wasn't sitting on some, foundation server sitting under my desk, and, to make sure that all those changes were going, live, and we could all see our changes happening at sort of a moment's notice. We opted to use Vercel as the hosting platform, so that as we're committing changes in Git, we see those builds happen immediately if they succeed, right? So we put a little logic in there for, if anything fails, we all get notified of that, so we can go back and fix that. And the public instance of this is always up and running. So I guess, if you want to talk a little bit more about, some of the things that we needed to watch out for and some of the decisions maybe that we made when we were architecting this. George, you started the hub and spoke approach. So I'm gonna quickly lean on you for this one then.
Oh, definitely. Moving data, I love. And so to kind of recap a lot of the things everybody's saying, the integration approach, whether it's an app or an API, the overarching of having good documentation is going to come into play. And so there's really two ways I start thinking about it, where, as you just said, Nick, Contentstack has apps, so to say, where within Contentstack, I want to merchandise a product. I can use a single click app, have it pull up, merchandise a product. And so that may be great, but there may be use cases where I want to layer in my own business logic. Before I send data to Algolia, I want to check inventory, because inventory is relevant for Algolia, not really relevant for Contentstack. And so being able to mix and match, use an integration where it makes sense, it's quick and easy, or do API to API, layer in my own business logic, is really where I think MACH shines, where I get out of the box. I don't have to build everything, but I can layer in business logic where I need to, because again, APIs, everything's documented. It's very straightforward to do, but some things don't need business logic. Cloudinary with Contentstack, very straightforward from a perspective of leveraging images. BigCommerce with a category page in Contentstack. And so again, being able to do both enables us to do that mapping exercise. Really, how is everything put together? And so going through that and knowing the business logic, and we've kind of called out, this is a real life use case that is going to be live at a conference selling items. And so there is some business logic with selling items. And so inventory being that one we called out. But we're not $100 million business, unfortunately. ABC, our website isn't going to be processing that much. And so you can see use cases of when operating a large scale business logic gets more complex. So the value of the turnkey apps isn't diminished. There still are use cases for it, but there may be use cases of extending or bringing your own business logic. And so that is really where, having the best of both worlds, so to say, comes in and enables us to move really fast where we need to and want to, but account for inventory, stuff flying off the shelf at the conference. That's some business logic we need to account for. So we didn't have to build everything. We only had to build what we needed to when we were moving the data between all these systems. And that's really what helped us move so fast, but have something tangible that works.
And great. And I think thinking about that from sort of a bigger picture, right? Obviously out of the box integrations, they're cool. They do a thing. They really help us accelerate our development. But I think the thing that makes them even more powerful is that they're extendable, right? So it's not sort of this black box magic thing where if it does what your business needs it to do, fantastic. If not, then it's junk. The ability to pull these things out, right, from a development perspective and extend them and add in whatever business requirements you have, right? So even when thinking about how we needed our systems to interact where there wasn't an out of the box integration, that was fine. We just moved the data a little bit. And now all of a sudden everything is where it needs to be, right? So we're not saying, and it's an important point that all integrations that any of us offer are going to be the be all end all of everything, but it might get you 90%, 95%, 100% of the way for what the business requirements are. And I think that's the big value of the agility of all these API platforms working together. And sort of to answer a question that I think Sam had thrown in there, when we're talking about Lego building blocks, right? When we're talking about these things, this is kind of where a lot of that surfaces, where those decisions make about which interfaces are we going to use, right? So is there a standard set of APIs and interfaces for all of these things? Not particularly, but by reference there is, right? So the way that we're surfacing a lot of data from outside of, let's say, the Contentstack interface is we're creating what we call blocks, right? So very much like Lego building blocks, these modular blocks, these sort of baked components that an editor or a marketer can activate and move around. That is one set of standards that all of these integrations are connecting to. So it doesn't matter how the data is coming into that. It doesn't matter what sort of APIs are available. What the end users, right, the people who are actually dealing with the platforms, they have that repeatable set of components that look and feel just like they belong in whatever native platform they're appearing in. So from that perspective, it's less important that we have that standardization at the development end of things, but that the experience of the people using the tools has that standardization. That being said, we all have highly compliant APIs. You can choose your flavor for SDKs and all those kinds of things. I don't think we put it anywhere on here, but as part of our decision-making process, we decided that we would go with a React front end, just because we all have React components, right? So it's very easy for us to stand those things up nice and quickly as well. So I think that was another sort of decision that I think I meant to include on here, but there you go. It's vocal and we are recording this. So it exists in perpetuity, ad nauseum, forever, fin. But I think moving along from this, right, if we start thinking about how these platforms are interacting, cool, there's some neat little arrows here, but let's think about the data itself, right, and how we're mapping those things. So that was one of the sort of items of importance, was how are we going to manage if we think about it, right, we have 3 distinct sets of record keeping, and then we have Algolia on top of that, right? So maybe as the sort of the expert on all things Algolia, maybe Sajid, if you want to kind of take a little example or an explanation of why we chose to choose, how we chose where data is going to live and what was going to be what master system for what sort of information.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Now, just like I mentioned earlier, that we chose, or MACH allows you to pick the best of breeds. And so in this case, like you want to pick, that's where your sources of truth are. Like, for instance, BigCommerce will have your products and categories. Pretty much your inventory will also be managed there as well. Contentstack, all content that's needed for either marketing, for any type of content that you might need. And then obviously Cloudinary for your asset management. They have great APIs to on the fly make any adjustments to your images. So those are essentially your sources of truth. As for Algolia, what we do is we fit in terms of, like, we don't consider ourselves a source of truth, because the other places have really all the updated information. We index the content as it's coming from Contentstack, since it's the hub of all these integrations from BigCommerce to Cloudinary, and any changes that are happening from a product to categories will make its way to Contentstack and eventually into Algolia. The only integration that we have from BigCommerce to Algolia is more the inventory itself. So when we look at Algolia itself, it's unstructured. You can put any type of content into an index. You can have as many index as you want. You can set up a products index, a Contentstack content index, and kind of provide more of a federated search. So Algolia is pretty flexible. It's not it's not opinionated. It allows you the freedom to put any type of content structure. Now you have to be careful, because each type the content structure can have an effect on relevance. So we do provide guidance from Algolia documentation saying, hey, this is, if you're trying to structure it this way. These are some of the outcomes or some of the effects that you might, what your end users will experience. So, but you can always try this out, test it out, and then see what the experience looks like and iterate and keep iterating until you have the right, not popularity, but the experience that you're going for your end user and the right conversion for yourself, for itself. So.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think one of the things that really helped us make those a lot of those easier decisions to manage as well is by doing everything by reference, right? So, talked about the idea of synchronizing data from one platform to another. We made the decision to not do that at all, right? Because that's especially with a short time frame, right? You don't want to have two systems keeping each other updated. And the other thing is, all four of us have extraordinarily high performant APIs, right? You can't be a MACH technology without having fast, resilient, and redundant APIs, right? We cache all of our outputs out onto a CDN. So, you don't have to make the same API call twice. The results were already there. So you didn't even need to hit the source servers. Right. So using that as an idea, if we are kind of mapping everything instead of storing everything, it becomes really easy, right? We can see on this diagram that the product IDs for the products that we want get embedded within the content item, right? So let's think about this as an example of a product detail page, right? I might have the product IDs and the asset IDs for the product images being stored within Contentstack. So now I have one block of JSON that has references to all of the things that I need to know about. So I can send that information over to Algolia, and Algolia can say, all right, I'm going to index the content, the marketing information that's here. Then I'm going to go grab what I need from BigCommerce, or we're going to, combine all of that using an automation or something. And likewise with Cloudinary, right? So if there's a video, let's pull in the text for the video, right? So we can index that stuff and add that to the search relevance. So in effect, what's happening is we end up with a single kind of entity, for lack of a better word, within Algolia that has all of that data concatenated, or as Sajid said, right, it's super flexible. You can separate those things out and then combine the results in the front end. But also that way, when BigCommerce does something, right, like maybe something gets updated in that platform, great example being the inventory, it can then make a nice, simple, reliable little call to say, hey, Algolia, go find anything that's been indexed with this product ID and update the inventory. So now the communication that's happening back and forth between systems is as lightweight and as fast as possible. And the front end is what's using all of those IDs as reference to make all of those calls asynchronously and build the DOM all at once, right, from all of the different sources of truth. So just a little bit more, I guess, in this example of it being sort of that product detail page where you have all of these different sort of components making that user experience.
One thing maybe just to call on the front end too, which has been really helpful in this process and to think through the product detail page is we use TypeScript. And so from that perspective, whether you're returning a search result or you're doing a product detail page and Algolia returns information, it's all using the same, in our terminology, a type product. And so you're able to kind of have that enforced on a front end perspective. So you are able to fetch data from different sources, and on the front end, it's enforced by TypeScript. And so it is a very seamless development flow. You're just getting data from where you need that data, whether it's a search result or a product detail page. BigCommerce and Algolia kind of able to return that same format and enforce it on the front end. So as a developer, you essentially, where should I get this data from? You're able to make those decisions. Is this data I should fetch in real time, or am I able to do it statically? And you're able to, have that enforced throughout the front end experience as well.
Yeah, super good point. And I think that kind of leads us into the next thing we wanted to talk about, which is when we're thinking about these things, right? Having those different components and those different integrations that we can leverage from an out-of-the-box perspective, right? Whether they're kind of pre-built types or whether they're actual apps, right? So we made a little bit of a reference to the fact that Contentstack has sort of an app framework. We have something called the marketplace. It allows you to go in, click a button. You can see here I had highlighted Cloudinary, right? I can click install app. That's going to install the Cloudinary integration. That's going to give me a dashboard widget. That's going to give me the custom field that allows me to select assets and put that into my content type, or a rich text editor extension that allows you to pull that into text-based content as well. So we have a bunch of these existing integrations that folks can just leverage to pull in, and it allows you to sort of compose up that kind of ultimate solution really quickly as well. So I guess when we're thinking about that, George, is there anything that you kind of wanted to pile on about, the agility and the speed that this kind of gives us?
Yeah, I think from the perspective of getting started, this can't be beat as far as, it was a day exercise to get the front end with all of the same data. And so as the example, a search result was returning the same product that it lived in BigCommerce. I was able to merchandise a category page in Contentstack, and by the way, throw in a Cloudinary video at the same time. And so the getting started, this can't be beat as far as pre-can integration. And then as you think about scale, complexity, this is where you touched upon extending. And so the flexibility of these apps is great, i.e. I want to layer something in. I want to fetch a different product object, things like that. You're able to really extend and start using these to bring in complexity. And then at the end of the day, all of this is being powered by our APIs. And so use cases of Algolia pre-can integration is great for syncing data, but I've got an edge case where I want to keep inventory in real time. Great. That's a webhook I can set up in BigCommerce admin, ping that over to, 5 lines of JavaScript to, update Algolia via their API. And so by having, everything being powered by an API, there's no roadblocks or anything, but you don't have to build everything. And that's where this comes in as far as the, openness plus a SaaS-like app experience is really can't be beat as far as moving fast and getting things to work. And then, from the perspective of once you see things working, it gets much easier to iterate. When you're starting from zero and you're thinking, oh, I got to move all this data, I have to do X, Y, and Z. From a developer standpoint, it can add up quick and become overwhelming. You don't really know where to start. And so from that, we were able to start quick, iterate. And as I said, our small little conference business had business logic that we were able to easily overcome. But, the $100 million complexity is something that, isn't going to hit any roadblocks in this model.
Sure.
I definitely agree with George as well. I think with these integrations enable you to try something really quickly and fail fast. So if it works, great, and extend it, continue to iterate. And if it doesn't, you have to look at the next option. So allows you to get to that point of realization, like, okay, is this going to work for me? And you're able to get that information really quickly too.
All right. So I think just to sort of move along, we're coming up towards the end of time. And I guess real quick, some of the things I just wanted to highlight, right, is when we're thinking about what some of the neat things, right, that we as technology companies wanted to sort of highlight in these projects, right, from the Contentstack perspective, there were a few things we wanted to sort of showcase, because these are just things that all of our customers use, right? The ability to have live preview where I can drag and drop and compose a page, right, or a landing page or some visual representation of the data very quickly and easily. Obviously, you can see here our marketplace, right? We're using a new feature for automations, right, that allows super powered kind of web hookability, I think was the term we came up with earlier. That doesn't exist, but it should, absolutely should. So I think, from the Contentstack side, right, we wanted to show how all these different technologies kind of work together, how we integrate these things together. And you're also going to see some really neat things from the other folks here. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick second to sort of plug some of the awesome sauce that folks are going to be able to experience with this project. So I guess, I need to moderate this, right? So let's start with top of my order that no one else can see. So Maribel.
Sure. So Cloudinary is the best in breed for the media experience platform. We're all about the visual experience. Think images, animated GIFs, videos, AR, VR, 360, shoppable videos, etc. With the content comes metadata, and we can use it to personalize the user's experience and connect to other systems with our widgets, APIs, and SDKs. We manage the entire workflow from uploading content to managing and sharing your assets, transforming media in real time, like auto cropping, auto sizing, auto quality. We can personalize with Photoshop like effects, like imagine swapping out backgrounds, applying discount badges, overlaying your customer's name or image to preview before purchase. We also compress media without you visually seeing a difference, and we can deliver with our multi-CDN capabilities based on your end user's location. So yeah, again, all of this through our widgets, APIs, and SDKs.
All right, excellent. Sajid, over to you since you're next on the list here.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so Algolia, I mean, we are like the best search out there. I mean, it's not by accident. You can even check Gartner and you can see that we're like out in the leader quadrant. And, you know, our foundation is from search and discovery. We provide merchandising, we provide rules to be able to tailor your experiences from any landing pages to your searches itself. So we're really flexible in terms of what we can do with our search product. And now we also have a recommend product, which if any e-commerce platforms are looking to do buy together or bought together related products, it's a perfect product for that as well. But when it comes to search, you know, one of the things that you'll notice from Algolia is speed, but speed alone is not going to win your customer. Relevance is a key thing in addition to speed. So we provide both at an optimal experience for both the business user and the end users.
All right, and last but George, over to you.
Perfect. Yeah, I think what BigCommerce brings is really our philosophy, and we use this terminology open SaaS. And where it really shines or it's neat in this project is when we're thinking about moving fast, doing headless, you don't have to build everything. And so, yes, we were plugged into a React front end, communicate with everybody, but we still needed to be transactional. So we have an off-the-shelf SaaS checkout you can use, pre-integrated with everything. And so what we were able to do is build everything we want, but hey, I don't want to build a PCI compliant checkout for a conference. Let me grab one off the shelf. And so BigCommerce's open SaaS philosophy really enables you to build what you need or want to build and get things off the shelf.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think the culmination, right, of all of these easy to use componentized things, right, that we all brought to the table, whether it's these awesome, you know, interactive galleries, or, you know, being able to recommend things based on historical relevance, or being able to just quickly do something that we're going to have to do anyways, like get a shopping cart together. I think that's sort of where we've all really seen, you know, we always talk about these superpowers of speed, agility, but, you know, actually getting together and building something complete, right, and not just a POC or an MVP, but something that actually works, I think has been quite eye-opening from my perspective, at least. I certainly don't want to talk for other folks, but excellent. So that's all good stuff. So I think thank you guys very much. We just have a couple of things to talk about real quick. First off, this is not the final session. We have one more coming up on the 11th of May. So same time in the middle of the week. So go ahead and get yourself registered. There will be a link popping up. Oh, it's already there. Man, these webinar fairies are on point today. So go ahead and get yourself lined up for session 3, where we're gonna, you know, get a little bit into the weeds of getting this up and running. So yeah, thank you guys very much for your time. And as a last thing as well, just wanted to call out again, mentioned it very briefly, but Contentstack's first customer convention is going to be held on the second to last, the 23rd of May. It starts on the 23rd of May, and it will be in beautiful Austin, Texas. So there's also going to be a link to that in the chat as well. So I guess, you know, give it a last chance to see if anybody has any questions or comments that they would like to add from the audience. You know, feel free to drop those in. Yeah.
Hey, Nick, did we mention the Slack store, that they will get to experience all of this working together?
I think we should. If we didn't, that is a huge miss on my part. So yeah, this will be this project that we're working on, guys. It is a little clandestine, right? We're not showing you anything. This is all getting revealed at ContentCon. So that is sort of that date that we were talking about. So that's when everything will be visible. It'll be experienceable. Also a new made-up word again. So it's a public thing, right? So it lives on a live domain that people are going to be able to access. So you won't just be listening to us talk about this fictitious project, right? It is actually a thing that is now done, and we will be sort of unveiling that at the end of May for everybody to experience. So excellent. Doesn't look like we have any more questions coming through. So thank you guys very much for your time, both from the attendee perspective and if you're watching this on recording. Thanks. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us afterwards as well. We're always happy to chit chat. So thank you guys, and yeah, have a great rest of your day, whatever day of the week it is when you're watching this.